Hello, everyone. Welcome to StudioJake, or if you're listening to Conservative News or Daily Wire, of course, I am your host, Jacob Airy, and today I have a very special guest. I have Hollywood superstar Robert Davi on the phone. He is the star of, oh my gosh, so many incredible films. License to Kill, which is actually my favorite James Bond movie, as well as The Expendables 3, and he was also a major character in the comedy American Carol. Mr. Davi, welcome to StudioJake.
Thank you to have me on, Jake.
So,
Great meeting you.
so you are you have been active in film for several decades. You have gone through from the 70s, I believe, and
77. I did my first film with Frank Sinatra in 1977.
Now, that's really interesting because you also, aside from starring with Sinatra, don't you sing Sinatra's songs also?
Well, first off, they're not his songs. They're the American Songbook. But I pay tribute in my show to his contribution to not only music, but also to society.
Right.
Tony Bennett sings the songs, and Bing Crosby sang them. You know what I mean? Billie Holiday, Rosemary Clooney. They're songs that have lasted the test of time. Now, Lady Gaga's singing them. You know what I mean? I mean, these are songs that just seal just in an album of the Great American Song. Bob Dylan did 3 albums, which I did a music video with Bob Dylan. Great guy. On the Sinatra album he did. But yes, so I travel the world doing the Great American Songbook, and Quincy Jones calls me one of the best guys doing it today. And I guess the similarity might be Sinatra was a terrific actor, and he was able to tell a story in his song, and he had a depth of voice that most people didn't have, or at that time, or since. And there's a I have an operatic background as he had. There's a lot of similarities, but it's in some aspects.
Now, you are also continuing this incredible film career you have, but not just in thrillers and actions, but there's actually a documentary coming out about you, directed by Tom Donahue, Davi's Way, where it's all about. Tell us a little bit about the documentary. What specifically does it cover?
It's funny. Leo DiCaprio coined it Davi's Way. He saw the documentary several times. His company's involved in it. Davi Way is involved in it, as is Danny A. And it is following me, preparing to celebrate Sinatra's 100th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
And it's a funny journey. It's a cross between Spinal Tap and Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Nice. With
music, and a lot of just absolutely very raw. And it was at the Hampton Film Festival. It won a couple of awards in other places, and we'll be having a screening in LA next week, I believe, end of next week.
That's pretty amazing. Now, what was it? Because you're used to obviously being behind a camera, but my understanding is from other people I've talked to who have done documentaries, it's a little bit different because you go from playing a persona behind the camera to it's just these people following you and documenting this one part of your life. Was that a little unusual, or you were like, oh no, this is all the way, I'm in?
Yeah, well, you mean in front of the camera,
right?
Because I've also been behind the camera. I've directed, when film I directed, The Dukes, won 9 awards. But what it is it's a matter of just being authentic. I didn't want to sanitize who I was. I didn't want something saccharine. I wanted, my kids are in it. There's conflict. There's humor. There's pathos. It's quite entertaining. And the screenings we've had have just been tremendously successful. The audiences love it, and like I said, it's very raw. And I wanted it that. I didn't want it. It was not scripted. It's unscripted. Although you would think it was, you know what I mean? but I just let it hang out.
What one and are some of your upcoming films? Because you've got a couple of upcoming films coming out in 2017. Are some of these films highlighted in the documentary, or does it specifically focus on the Sinatra's 100th birthday?
No, it's the music. It's not that. It's the music. It's getting this thing together. It's that process. It's me, doing music around the world. It's a bunch of different things.
That's amazing.
But it has nothing to do with the films that are like Your Move, which comes out, I think, in 2018.
Right.
That was directed by Luke Goss. And
now, what's Luke Goss is also starring in this film, so he I believe he also wrote it and is, like you said, he's directing it.
Yeah, he did a terrific job.
That was my next question, was because I know it's whenever a actor goes behind the camera and in front of the camera, and then he's got other actors to go through, you have to have an incredible work ethic. What was it like working with Luke Goss in that kind of capacity?
Well, first off, he's a terrific actor. He's also a musician. He and his brother had a big group back in the day. Actually, they're touring again in August, I think, in London. And some other places, Australia. But he's very, very equipped. He's got a terrific eye, an instinctual eye, great sensitivity. I've seen almost all the film now, and he just did a terrific job with it. And I'm excited about it coming out. I play a Mexican detective. We filmed it in Rosarita Beach, so it's got a great feel to it, and it's a thriller that it's an artistic thriller, I would say.
Nice. And one thing I've noticed about action films as of late is they actually. Thriller, oh, go ahead.
It's like a revenge thriller. You know what I mean? I would say, it has a lot of texture.
Now, and that's one thing that I've noticed about a lot of action films lately is they lack that kind of artistic endeavor that they put behind it, and so that's really exciting to hear that he puts in a creative, artistic style to it.
You'll see. You'll get involved in the film. He lets it breathe.
Nice.
He lets it breathe, and you're able to almost meditate into the film, and then all of a sudden it just gets you caught up in it, because you're enjoying the images, and you're enjoying what's happening, and as opposed to being assaulted,
That's amazing. I'm going to insist my audience definitely go check out Deported. Where will they be able to see it?
Well, that's Your Move. That's the thing I did with Luke, is Your Move. Deported is something else. That's a comedy. That I don't know when it's coming out. All these things will be getting their release dates shortly.
Now, yes, and I'm sorry. I said Freudian slip there. I was going to ask you about Deported next, but what? And you said Deported is an upcoming comedy, and you play you play Agent Buchholz in it. What kind of comedy is this going to be? Is it going to?
It's a romantic comedy about a kid that's in love with a girl from Canada, and he wants to get her a green card.
Oh.
And it's the escapades going through that, and I play an INS agent, interviewing them and trying to catch them in a lie. But it's funny. They have a lot of the largest social influences on Instagram are involved in it. And some of the major kids from Nickelodeon, like James Maslow, and
Nice.
So it's a very young, hip cast.
I grew up watching Nickelodeon, so I know that I will definitely be there to check out, see what all my favorite stars they'll be doing. It also has Eric Roberts in it. He's had a successful film career. Of course, he was in The Dark Knight, one of the most critically acclaimed movies of our decade. Were you able to work with him at all in this film?
Oh, Eric and I have worked together several times. We're friends, respect each other. like we did a film, The Butcher, together, another one, Spreading Darkness, and this film, and I think we did something else, two or three other things. We've been working together over the years.
Now I've got to ask you a throwback question. As I said when I introduced, my favorite James Bond film is License to Kill, and Tim Dalton played James Bond. And my father, he's a huge Bond film fan, and I have to ask, what do you think made, because Tim Dalton was in two, he's in The Living Daylights and License to Kill. What do you think made those two films unique about the James Bond series?
Well, they were two transitional films. First off, they were starting to how should I say it? They were starting to take into account the feminist movement and make Bond less misogynistic. That was one of the things, and not necessarily correctly so, but was one of the issues of what was happening. Living Daylights was a step in that, but and also the father. I call Timothy Dalton the father to Daniel Craig.
Yes.
And because License to Kill, and I was like the father to Javier Bardem, you know what I mean?
Right.
In License to Kill, you had the edgiest Bond villain of all time, and very close to the Fleming books in terms of that edge, and also how Bond and the villain were mirror images of each other, which Ian Fleming discussed at length in Casino Royale. So we went back to those books, and even if you look at my stature and Timothy's stature, you know, it wasn't like I wasn't a plump villain or a villain with, you know, some prosthesis or some weirdness. I was a formidable physical presence, as he was, you know, and so it was, you know, and again, the edge of the Bond films, bringing him into a different era. Now, it was ahead of its time, and now in retrospect, when people see License to Kill, it gets much more appreciation.
And I agree with that, because as soon as I saw like Skyfall and Quantum of Solace, I thought, man, he is definitely getting inspiration from those films. And even if you watch Spectre, I thought that the villain in that was like that. He was a formidable physical presence on the screen, exactly like you described.
Yeah, they were getting back to that formula instead of it being, you know, and it's still, and don't forget, of course, they have so much more technical acuity right now. With that, all our stunts were done in real time, basically, you know. Right,
and now
which is refreshing when you see it on the big screen again.
I agree. I wanted to ask you one thing. You've been a part of several franchises. You've been a part of James Bond, obviously, and also the Expendables. Have you thought about, just out of curiosity, Die Hard as well? Yes, absolutely. Have you thought of a film franchise that's going on now, like say the comic book franchise, or like now they're starting to kick off a Kingsman franchise? Have you thought about, man, I would really like to be a part of that because I like the creativity, I like the talent?
To be honest with you, I'm enjoying the singing so much. My album went to number 6 on Billboard Jazz, Davi Sings Sinatra, and I've been touring the world. I went to China, Australia, Latvia, Sweden, Estonia, Budapest, Italy, Germany, Monaco, across America, you know, performing for 5,000, 15,000, 1,500, you know, with the band. And again, like I said, my album, Davi Sings Sinatra, On the Road to Romance. I'm about to start my new album, as a matter of fact. Was about to start picking some of the songs, and I'll make an announcement on that in the near future. But that's what I'm focused on more so than, I mean, I love the films, but it's curious. it's a curious thing, Jake, that perhaps the yeah, I mean, they're absolute. They're part of those tentpole films. I say that would be nice to get involved in that film. You know, there's that feeling at times. But there's a different era now. There's a different take on characters. I really, if you look at the films of the past, the decline of the cinema, and I don't mean the technical aspect of cinema,
right?
But the individuality of the actors that was so definable. The Robert Mitchums, the Humphrey Bogarts, the Lee Marvins, the Charles Bronson. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Today we have guys that look like ICM or CAA agents. You know what I mean? They look like corporate scoundrels. They're not necessarily, they don't hold the stature for me, and that's a difficult thing to, so I mean, look at that. That's something I could. I mean, of course, there are some wonderful, you know, like Leo DiCaprio and Pitt and Clooney, and there's some great actors, and of course, you know, De Niro and Pacino still. But for the most part, you know, and Gerald Butler and you know, there's a bunch of great guys, but they're all coming from England or Ireland or Australia. The American male star, a director told me years ago, the American male has been effeminized. And that's why a lot of the leading men come from different parts of the world, if you really analyze it.
And do you think that that's has something to do with why even like incredibly talented actors, there's a perception that that it's hard to find a good American star? That's why an Englishman is playing Superman right now, which no Henry Cavill is a great actor. I'm not discounting that, but as opposed to finding like an American actor to play Superman, he's obviously an iconic American character. Do you think that maybe the people behind the scenes, the producers, the casting directors, they kind of see that same thing as well?
I think there's a concerted cultural effort to portray maleness on screen in a different way.
And how do you think that came about? Because you're a very outspoken center right. I don't want to mischaracterize you, but very outspoken center right celebrity, you could say. Do you?
Yeah, but I'm you know, I'm an independent. I'm you know, gay marriage doesn't, you know, I don't get like bent out of shape on transgender or gay marriage issues.
Right.
You know, I mean, yeah, I mean.
But I just mean in the context of the culture, like what you're talking about, how there's you feel like how you said there's a concerted effort to kind of feminize men.
Absolutely, there is it, because I see it. You know, I mean, I see it. Come on, just look at it, and that comes from, you know, it comes from a whole. Look at what's on television. I don't have to tell you.
Yeah.
If you watch TV, you know, you have it becomes it's a different kind of. There's a concerted effort to portray the American male as a metro, which is fine, but too much is too much. It's the same reason why. Okay. Donald Trump, I called in an article on Breitbart the John Wayne of politics. All right? I called him the John Wayne of politics. There was, all of a sudden, somebody comes along, whether you agree with him or not, that is plain speaking and is clearly heterosexual. He's not, and this is not putting down the effete intellectual.
Right.
But the effete intellectual has a different you know, there's a difference there. There's something else going on.
Do you?
And
oh, go ahead.
Culturally, you know, you're seeing a plethora of shows that promote a different agenda.
Do you think that that's why shows like, say, Hawaii Five-O and Blue Bloods have such a strong following, as they portray more like the masculinity, in Steve McGarrett, and then of course in fictional Commissioner Frank Reagan?
That may or may not be, you know what I mean? That may or may not be, but there is but absolutely, women want strength, and men, it's still, we still, as again, going back to Trump, as Trump proved it in the country.
Now,
you know what I mean?
And you're actually going to be talking about Trump during a panel at Politicon this weekend.
Yeah, one of the panels I'm on is Trump, Genius or Lunatic.
And you've got that panel has an amazing lineup. You've got Sally Cohn, you've got Clay Aiken, Scotty Nell Hughes, and Anthony Atamanuik. I hope I'm not mispronouncing that. Do you think I am fully expecting a lively conversation? Do you expect one as well?
Yeah, I would expect a lot of Trump bashing. And I'm there to kind of probably balance that, because I would of course take the line, he's as crazy as a fox, you know what I mean? he's more genius, he's like the Picasso of politics.
And I would agree with that, because after the London attacks, when Trump was abroad and he came out and said, I'm going to call these terrorists evil losers, I'm not going to call them monsters, because that's what they want. I thought that was a brilliant line, because he had his enemies within an hour arguing whether terrorists are evil losers or not. And
could you believe that?
I know.
Could you believe?
I thought that was genius.
He's genius. He's genius.
I would, like you said, crazy like a fox. He just has that just that way of smoothing it in. And you say what you want to about what's going on, with Sessions or whatever. He definitely has that. How should I word this? Well, I'll just say he has that genius way of changing the topic when it needs to be changed.
He's the most authentic, unpredictable, and as he said it during the campaign, he's the most authentic. And how I have perceived it, he's the most authentic. He's the unpredictable. He listens. He is. He's able to change. He doesn't care. And it terrifies the establishment. Look, it's no secret. I don't know if you read my articles on Breitbart, but the day Trump announced, I called it that he was the guy that was going to win. And I've written subsequently, Jacob, many articles when everyone was burying him. And if you read my articles on Breitbart, you will see that I led the conversation, and not only that, a lot of the talking points within the administration, because of my awareness of the country that I've been writing on Breitbart back when Ben Shapiro was writing for Breitbart. And I talked about immigration in 2010, when in an article that said, GOPers, independents, and Tea Partyers, lend me your ears. It's time to deal with immigration. 2010, and I laid out a whole platform on what we should do with immigration.
And one thing I appreciated too about this past election. Now I'll be upfront. At the beginning of the election, I was a never Trumper but now I'm not, because he's proved me wrong in so many aspects. And one thing I appreciated was he actually got celebrities to brag about where they stood, especially if you were on Trump's side, because not just you, but Kevin Sorbo, he came out and supported Trump way early on, I believe. Joy Vila, of course, and Stacey Dash. And that was one thing I appreciated, was there was this misconception, I think, because of the media, that celebrities... No,
not many. I have to disagree with you.
Oh, okay.
There were really no celebrities coming out for Trump for quite a while. And there hasn't been more of a lack of celebrity endorsement. I've never seen such a lack of celebrity endorsement that are vocal than I've seen for Donald Trump.
That's interesting.
And a lot of people, I sent my articles to many people, I won't mention names, but some people that wound up supporting him when they all were saying that I was nuts. And then finally they came around and they changed their mind. Because I was on Fox News many times, you know. So, and a lot of those other guys you mentioned are terrific people, but they kind of like, you know, I mean, they did then start supporting Donald Trump at varying degrees of time, but not writing like I had.
Oh no, you were very active on the media side. I mean, as far as the new media online, you were very active.
Yeah, and if you look at some of the things, you know, I mean, I even said, I mean, I called it all the way. You know what I mean? Rubio was cheetah-like against Jeb, but America needs a lion. You know what I mean? I mean, this is Davi to evangelical voters. We need a fighter, not a healer for president. You know, I mean, Trump fights against media lies the way Romney wouldn't. That's October 2015. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Stuff like that. Trump versus Hillary. Merry Christmas, or may the force be with you. The battle for the soul of America. 2015. Davi, when Johnny Friendly and his goons took over the National Review. January of 2016. Yeah, I mean, you know, every step of the way, I kind of like the long con, Rubio, Crystal, and the destruction of the America. I mean, if you read some of these things, hugs won't rebuild America. America, the first transcendent nation. I mean, the GOP establishment joins the Hollywood left to fight Donald Trump and the American voter. I mean, on and on and on. I had given a dissertation, and it goes on. I have another 20 articles that absolutely map out the issues prior to anyone else mapping them out. On Neil Cavuto, I mentioned that if you ever look at that interview that I did, that was in 2015. I said there are people that have been forgotten, because it was that time when people were saying Trump is the people are angry. You know what I mean? The Trump supporters are angry people,
right?
And they're haters. And I said that's not true. It's out of love of country. I said there's a group of people in America, Neil, that have been forgotten. I know that for a fact. They have been forgotten. Because I travel the country and I talk to the everyman. I'm a blue-collar actor. I'm not one of the elite. I consider myself a blue-collar actor. And that's where I was able to, and I talked about this over the years, looking for a candidate that was able to capture what I felt was missing from the elite in media and in politics. And it was something that was missing because, you know, you get wrapped up in an intellectual dialectic and you lose touch with the sweat of America. And anyway, well, I don't want to go on and on.
Well, I've got one more question on this. Where do you think the polls went wrong? Because if you look, there was, I think, maybe only 2 polls that predicted Trump was going to win. Most everyone said, oh, Hillary was going, on election day, Hillary was going to win in a landslide. Where do you think the pollsters went wrong?
Well, everybody went wrong from the beginning. Here's 2 things. I remember, again, the isolation and the hubris and the, how do I say it, the not understanding that the genius of him understanding where he had to be and communicating to the American people, okay, those areas, those battleground states that they said they couldn't win. You know what I mean?
Right.
The ability to find those battleground states and appeal to the people, bring those big crowds. I remember George Clooney was on the news during the Cannes Film Festival, and he says, "No, nobody's gonna vote for Donald Trump. Nobody's gonna vote out of fear and hatred." Well, it wasn't fear and hatred again. It was common sense. And I bet him $1,000 to his favorite charity that Trump was gonna win. Never took me up on it, nor do I even know if he knows it, but this was on a Cavuto show.
Right.
Here's what it is. Ready?
Ready.
This is what I wrote, Jacob, on the day that Donald Trump announced. All right, June 16, 2015. Donald Trump could be the presidential candidate who finally provides America with the message most grassroots conservatives have been waiting to hear. The common sense populist message of the Donald, while not as poetic as that of Ronald Reagan, goes right to the gut of an American population that has been ripping its hair out while watching the destruction of our republic from within. The compliance and lack of imagination from the Republican Party, along with the aggressive takeover by progressives who are bent on reshaping America into the image of Europe, has brought us to the point we are in now. I have not in my lifetime seen such a disparaging portrait of America as we see today, and it will take a leader who understands how to build, not just govern. We have had years of the tired blood of political elites who have dismantled America's individualism. We do not need another professional politician. Now, this is it. At this time in our history, we need someone who has the straightforward common sense and know-how to fix a nation that has been beaten down by nuanced pseudo-intellectuals who have no practical experience nor leadership qualities. Trump, whether you like him or not, is the kind of individual who built and made this country great. He deserves serious consideration in spite of what some perceive as unpolished presentation. And then it goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. In that alone, in that analysis alone, and that's the day he announced. Right after he announced, I started writing because I got that speech. I said, okay, here it is. Because I've been waiting for it for several years, writing about the lack of this in the political parties, both the left and the right. So he did what Ronald Reagan did. He was able to capture those blue dogs that were sitting there looking at the country and wondering what the hell happened to us. Their kids on heroin or themselves on heroin because America was being gutted. It was being ripped apart, was being reshaped. And no one was speaking up for them. And I remembered Ross Perot. You remember when Ross Perot ran?
Well, I was really young, but I remember.
Yeah, you see, I kind of remember. You know, I don't forget. I've been around so long. So I was there right in the heat of Ronald Reagan, when the left and the right were saying the same stuff about Ronald Reagan. You got to realize something. When Reagan ran, it was against the Bush. Bush was supposed to be president.
That's
they
right.
wanted George Bush won. And George Bush and Reagan ran against each other. And George Bush, they coined the term voodoo economics with Ronald Reagan. That was during that campaign. And so there was a whole thing against the elite establishment. So you had, again, you had this whole very interesting dynamic of most of the pundits, most of the people missing what I was sensing with the American people.
That's really, I would have to agree with that. I think President Trump did and still does touch on that, just that side of that forgotten man. And it would behoove the Democrats, as I believe Joe Biden in a recent interview said that they need to recapture that forgotten man. Otherwise, they're going to lose to Trump again in 2020.
They're going to lose. What they have done is they have gerrymandered and made the immigrant population who they're pandering to, not Americans. And there is a resentment to that. There's a resentment to, and because the lack of assimilation, and these guys not reading the tea leaves, the continuing ability of not having the courage to speak the truth nor read the tea leaves. Look at what Trump said when we watched all of a sudden the migrants coming along. I saw those migrants coming from different parts of the world, okay? And I'm watching the massive amounts of people entering Europe. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, they look like guys in there. They're 18, 22, 25, 35. Where are the old grandmothers crying and the babies? Where are they?
Yeah, I remember the media was pushing that narrative.
What?
I said the media was pushing that narrative.
The narrative of what?
Oh, these are, why do you want to not help orphans and widows and all that?
Exactly. And and Trump was the first. Now, I watched that, and it came to my mind, but Trump verbalized. He was able to sense that and go, wait a minute, where are the grandmothers? Where are the old ladies? I see young men. Now, during the Civil War, Was there a mass exodus? Were
No.
we going over to Canada? Maybe there was some, but not a mass exodus. You fight for your country.
Right.
So this was something else happening. This was used to repopulate, redistrict, something. And again, you go between. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I really don't know, but it sure seems like there's some other alternative plan, because it doesn't make sense.
And
nothing else makes sense. And if you read Ariana Fallaci's book, The Force of Reason, she was the first voice of the West talking about the migration to Europe, and she coined the term Eurabia.
you know, I've seen a couple other people use that phrase as well.
That was Ariana Fallaci was the first one.
It's really
She
interesting.
won a Pulitzer Prize for literature. She wrote a book in the 60s called Interview with History. She was a left-wing Italian journalist.
And she got it right.
She got, not only did she get it right, they were paying those young boys $5,000 a head to come to foreign countries and marry 5 women and have kids.
That's
So the same thing that the Democrats did in 1965 in terms of the Immigration Act opened the floodgates. Now, my grandparents came from Italy. We love immigrants, but they learned English.
Right.
In the household was speak of the English. People know that. We have this one. This was the last go-around before the immigrant population became so. And look, if anybody did the research, they have to know that Bill Ayers and President Obama were allies.
Oh yeah,
What
they're
Obama did through the Constitution or through executive orders, Bill Ayers was doing in the 60s by blowing institutions up. The attack on our police was happening in the 60s. This is the same scenario.
What do you think that now with Trump in power, now that he's the president of the United States, do you see a curve where it's going the other direction? Where like no, where do you see that that happening? We're going to put a stop to this. We're gonna stop flooding our streets with illegal immigrants. We're going to, as Trump says, we're going to put America first. Do you see that? Do you see that happening before your eyes, or was it all?
Yeah, we see it happening. We know that immigration is down and illegal immigration is down. We know that, and I think it's a good idea. Somebody came up with the idea of making the wall solar.
Yeah, that's a
And he
great
picked up
idea,
on
actually.
And that's a brilliant idea. You know what I'm saying? So he understands popular culture and says, hey, wait a minute, we could make this a solar wall. And I mean, so he's got. Look, there was a thing called the Wallman Ring in the 80s in New York. Ever hear of that?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
All right. In 1949, I think the Wallman family gave $650,000 to the city of New York to build an ice rink in Central Park. It was called the Wallman Ring.
Okay.
In 1980, Mayor Koch, the New York City Parks Department, and the state of New York decided that they needed to refurbish the ice rink. Okay?
Okay.
So they had $3 million in a 2-year program to redo the ice rink. Donald Trump's daughter, Ivanka, they had an apartment overlooking Central Park. After 2 years or so, she said, Daddy, when's the ring going to be ready? He says, oh, honey, they're building it. It'll be ready soon. 3 years. 4 years. Daddy, when's the rink going to be ready? 5 years. Daddy, the rink. 6 years. 6 years. Trump looking at this. Now it's 6 years, and how much is it? $9 million later.
Oh my gosh.
Okay? 6 years and $9 million later, the rink is not finished. Now they say they need another 2 years and $3 million to finish the rink. And Donald Trump says, let me take it over. This is crazy. Let me have the rink. They didn't want him to have it because they knew. Now here's a guy that's a builder. That's why I said in my first article, we need somebody that can rebuild the infrastructure of America. So what does Trump do? He finally wins. He has a big PR battle in New York City and gets control of this ice rink. He says to them, I will, if there are any overages, I will pay for it out of my pocket, and if there's any money saved, it will go to charity. I don't want any money for it.
Wow.
We made a deal.
That goes to the kind of president we need right now too.
That's what I'm saying. So what did he do? He went and saw what they were doing. Now, they were laying down copper tubing, okay, like miles of it, because it had a zigzag, you know what I mean?
Right.
To go underneath the rink to freeze the water, right?
Right.
And to put the Freon in. But what was happening is, of course, what happens in government projects, they put the copper tubing down and somebody would steal it 2 days later.
Oh my gosh.
And they put more down. So this went on for 6 years. Get it?
Right.
Then when they finally put it down and filled it with Freon and put the cement on top or whatever they had, it was uneven, and then they didn't check the tubing for leaks.
Oh
So
my
they had
gosh.
to rip it apart again, and this was continual disaster. Trump takes it. He calls up his friend in Montreal, who runs the team, owns the team. Who's the best ice skater at the building? He finds out, first of all, he says, who's designed this rink? It was they used a refrigeration expert out of Florida. Trump says, what the hell does he know about building ice rinks? He goes, he gets this guy in Montreal, he talks to him. He says, this guy builds the best rings. He says, give me his number. He gets his number. Guy comes down, he says, you don't use copper tubing. You use rubber tubing. Huge expense saved. You don't use Freon, you use brine, saltwater brine. That's a huge expense saved. Trump gets it done in 4 months and saves $750,000, which he gives to AIDS, cerebral palsy, and another charity.
That's amazing. And
okay,
and you can see he's making those deals now as president.
He's making, and when he had to work with the cement, so this way he didn't want the rink to be desecrated. You know what I mean? Vandalized.
Right.
So he had when everything was ready, he arranged for the New York City guys trucks, garbage, cement trucks from the Bronx to the city, 24/7, a 24-hour period to dump to bring all the cement in a 24-hour period. It was a legendary thing.
That's amazing. And do you? We're running out of time right now, but I want to ask you one more question about that. Do you see? How do you think, in terms of the last 8 years, we had nothing but rhetoric from President Obama? It was nothing but rhetoric, and like you said, a bunch of executive actions that are now we're seeing being overturned in courts. And how do you think, as far as the media has been treating Trump, despite him moving forward with the Veteran Affairs, he's actually getting things done as far as energy and the Veteran Affairs Department. Do you think the media will ever wake up and go, hey, maybe there's something to this guy? Or do you think they're just going to continue to bash him?
Look, it's no mistake. If you know the history of Hollywood and the media, they were controlled by the communists in the 40s and 50s in America. They're still there.
And you think this is a concerted effort to affect the Trump administration?
It's become globalism on a worldwide process. Look, how come Hillary Clinton, and you know this, she sold 20% of the uranium reserves to Russia?
Right.
President Obama said, he said, we'll talk about that after the election. I'll have more ability to do what I have to do.
Yes.
I mean,
I remember when that happened.
We all remember when it happened. But here they're talking about some bullshit. Russia, Putin, comma, Russia, Putin, comma, exclamation point, comma, Russia, Putin, and a follow-up, Russia, Putin, comma, WikiLeaks, Assange, comma, election, comma. I mean, this is what the media is. You see, the minute Trump won, George Soros, all these guys went a little bit nuts. All the money put into that, they saw it because it could be over. If he's successful, he can't be successful. If he's successful, both political parties are going to suffer.
And in my humble opinion, that is the shakeup that America needs right now. We've had establishment politicians controlling things, but not ever doing anything.
They're the commissars of today.
Absolutely. Mr. Davi, thank you again so much for doing this interview. It was very enlightening. Where can people find your music? Where can they download it for their iTunes or SoundCloud or whatever it is?
They can go to Amazon and iTunes, and they can get my album, Davi Sings Sinatra, Christmas songs, the album On the Road to Romance, and whatever. So they can go to those avenues and get it.
And be sure to be on the lookout for Your Move. It's coming out this year, directed by Luke Goss, starring Luke Goss and Mr. Davi. Mr. Davi, again, thank you for your time.
And Davi's Way, yes. Thank you, bro.